Power and Glory, and I made this quick video to give you an idea of how you play the game. Okay, I don't have time to go into all of the rules, but I am going to try to give you how the game works in a nutshell. So this is the game board shortly after it has been set up, and I'm going to try to zoom in here and talk about each of the parts of the board to give you a little better idea. In the upper left-hand corner, you're going to see a map of Western Europe. It's divided into 24 territories, and there are colored rings in some of them. There are 8 kings in the game. The players of the game are not the kings. The kings are kind of automated phantom players, if you will, and they have a starting position that is randomly chosen. And throughout the game, they're going to expand and conquer each other, taking over, and the board will fill up with colored rings as the game progresses. Down in the bottom section, the bottom half of the board, you'll see 8 castles, one for each of the kings. Let's see if I can kind of zoom in on one of the castles here and get some glare off of there. And I'll quickly point out the parts of the board, parts of the castle. This number section right here is court. Players will be able to play into the court, and I'll explain that a little bit more later. Then there's these areas right here which are favors. I'll explain more on that later as well. And then there's another place right here you can play, which is a sabotage. And all of that will be explained shortly. This quadrant right here is where all the scorekeeping and basically the state of the game is being kept. This icon right here indicates power, and this is each of the players has a color. You can see the 4 colors right there, and as a player moves up in power, they move clockwise, and when they hit a space that has a star, they're going to see a noticeable increase in power. The section right here with the flag is glory. This is more or less victory points, and likewise you will move your little token around clockwise. If at any point you get all the way to the end where the gold star is right here, you automatically win. This section right here is turn order. Turn order is plays a very vital role in the game, and it can be changed throughout the course of the game. But right now, it would go green, yellow, blue, red. And this last section up here, this shows the relative strength of the 8 kings. Right now, the black king is the strongest king, and the white king is the weakest. That's randomly seeded at the beginning of the game, so each game will start a little bit differently. At the top, you'll see there are some cards laid out. These cards each represent one of the 24 territories. There's 48 territory cards, so each territory is represented twice, and then there's one special card which basically indicates the end of the game. Okay, let me zoom back out again. So in a nutshell, here's how the game works. The game is played in rounds. Each round, players are going to play nobles. They basically look like little pawns here. And they can be played in various places on the game board. The most common place they would be played is in the court of a king. I'll zoom in there. For example, I've played here on the number 1 spot. And another player could come in, and once the number 1 spot is taken, the next best place is 2. So if another player were to play in the court of that king, they would play in the 2 spot. Each player starts with 2 pawns that can expand throughout the game, but you start with 2. So you're going to go around. Each player is going to take turns in turn order and placing their pawns. And Once they have placed all their pawns, the next phase begins, and that's called the battle phase. So I'll explain that next. These cards that are laid up across the top have a very the order is very important. Essentially, the three leftmost, these three right here, are going to be fought over in this round. And in this case, the leftmost one is Brittany. Now, players can affect that. One of the actions that a player can take is to place a pawn on a card and then effectively move it to either the front or the very back. But for right now, let's just assume nobody has done that, and Brittany is the leftmost card, so it's going to be fought over. Let me see if I can zoom in on Brittany here. Brittany is an interesting territory because it is touched by three different kings: white, red, and blue. Now, there are some rules for who's going to take that over, but essentially what it boils down to is who is the most powerful king. There are some reasons why the most powerful king might not win, but essentially that's what it's going to be. So in this case, you look over here, and of white, red, and blue, blue is the most powerful. So what's going to happen is blue is going to expand into Brittany. You're going to put the little blue ring there to indicate that. Over here, the next thing that's going to happen is blue's going to move up in power. They're just going to basically swap places with the guy above him, which in this case was purple. And then the next thing that happens, which is the really interesting part, is let's pretend there were some players in court. That king is going to give out favors, and he's going to give out favors in the order that those nobles appear in court. In this case, red would go first. And so red is going to choose a favor, and once that favor has been chosen, it can't be chosen again by another player this round for that king. So let's explain what those favors are real quick. He could choose power. If he chooses power, then basically you go up to this spot right here, power, and advance your red token one spot over. Once you reach the starred space, a special thing happens. You actually see a noticeable increase in power. Basically, you get a third pawn that you get to use in starting the next round. And if you get to this one, you get a fourth one, and if you get to this one, you get a fifth one. So you can have as many as 5 pawns working. But in this case, we've just advanced one spot. Back down here, so that's power. Blue now couldn't choose power. It's been taken by red. He could take, however, glory, which is down here. Oops. Let's see if I can get it on screen. Glory, which looks like a flag. Now that's essentially victory points. So blue in this case would move up one spot in the victory point, in the power track, which is basically victory points. Determines the winner of the game. Yellow then could choose from one of the other options. Turn order is an interesting one. So basically, if you come up here, if you choose turn order, yellow could then move either to the very front, like that, or to the very end. And there's reasons why you might want to be first or last. There's almost never, no situation where you'd want to be somewhere in the middle. So you can move to the front or to the back when you choose turn order, and everybody else slides around. Another thing you could have chosen, and we'll just say red has chosen this, is title. Now when you choose title, basically you take one of these rings and you put it on your pawn like that. And that will have a very important effect starting in the next round. And I'll explain that in just a bit. And then the last one is espionage. Espionage is very tricky and subtle favor to take. It has a few effects. The first thing it does is that it moves that king's arch rival down one spot. Now I haven't talked about arch rivals yet, but you'll see this little crossed swords icon. The castle directly across from it is that king's arch rival. So in this case, it's the orange king. And since you played it here, the orange king's power indicator would move down 1 spot. The next thing that happens is that at the end of the round, all of these guys are going to come off the board, but not this guy. He's going to stay there and actually slide down to the first position of court. So he gets to start the next round already in court. And that will also have a third benefit, which is to increase the power of the blue king. Now, there's some end of round things, but let's pretend we're now the second round, and we want to play into this court again. Now, if you remember, the red player took a blue title last turn. So if he were to play in the blue court again, he doesn't have to play in the second spot. He has a title, so he can jump ahead, actually. The title essentially allows you to jump ahead of anyone who has fewer titles of the same color of that king as that king. Now, if blue had a title for that king, red couldn't jump him. So getting a title gives you sort of a long-term affinity for a particular king. But at the same time, it also limits that king's ability to expand, because these rings, which are used also to expand into new territories. So when you've chosen a title, you've also limited that king's ability to expand into other territories. So it's an interesting little trade-off right there. That is the game in a nutshell. I've left out quite a few details, but you can read the rules and get all that. At the end of the game, basically what matters is who has advanced furthest in glory. And there is a tiebreaker where the first person to reach a particular level of glory goes inside this little inner track. And so, in this case, green would be the winner if this was the end of the game, right here. All right. Well, that's a Power and Glory in a nutshell. And I encourage you to take a look at the rules and get all the details. And I really encourage you to pick up the game and play it yourself. I think you'll have fun with it. Thanks.